Thanks. All right, and with that, hopefully you guys can see my screen. I'm just welcoming you all to the meeting. We have one announcement. We have a International Women in Biomechanics book club that just started. Our first book is The Joy of Movement. It's an excellent book by Dr. Kelly McGonigal at Stanford, and Emily Matievic is going to lead that discussion. So it's a bi-weekly meeting. I think our discussion is either in the general chat or the random chat on Slack, but feel free to message Emily if you are interested in joining our book club. And then one other announcement is that I hope you all are using Slack. We really encourage you to communicate on there and message each other on there. If you are unaware, on the side panel of Slack, there's three kind of dots and then a more button, and there's a channel browser. And the channel browser has a whole ton of channels, and we add channels all the time. You're always welcome to add your own channel if you'd like, invite people to it. But we just started a channel today called Fail Fabulously, and we encourage everyone to share their fails, what they learned from it, and just normalize failing because that is a part of science. And then with that, I would like to just introduce today's meeting hosts. Katie Knaus and Dr. Alexa Johnson helped put together an incredible meeting for you all with some really great keynote speakers and breakout sessions. So thank you so much to them, and I will pass it now to Katie to kind of tell us what we're going to talk about today.
Thanks. Yeah, so this meeting we wanted to talk all about like grants and awards and funding. This really kind of came from a discussion in the Slack where lots of questions to different people, and so we thought it would be kind of a fun chance to have a meeting to get together. So we'll start with our keynote speakers shown here. So get to hear some really awesome things from them, and then we'll move into breakout rooms that are going to be more kind of focused on specific opportunities we've kind of organized by both like country or location, and then also kind of career stage. So some options for either grad, postdoc, faculty. So there's lots of opportunities to kind of chat and ask questions in these sessions. So with that, I think we'll launch our keynote. I'm excited about it. So Missy, if you want to go.
Sure, so happy to be here. Thanks for the invitation. Get my slides going. For those that aren't familiar, I am the American Society of Biomechanics Awards Chair. This is a newer position for ASB. Traditionally, this has been run by the past president. So they finish their year of being president of ASB, and then they're thrown into this past president role where not only are they trying to finish up their own initiatives as a past president, they're also managing all the awards for the society. And I think it became really obvious of what a huge job that was for the past president, and a little unfair in a year where it should be a little bit of a lighter load for them, I think. So I'm excited to be in this role. It's 3 years that I have until, I'm just checking my time here, 3 years until we will then place another person in this role. So just eyes and ears open that within this year, I'm going to be looking for someone who can be kind of my assistant to learn the process, so that then the changeover to the next awards chair is a smooth one. Because typically year to year, it's like we've lost all this knowledge. The past president is gone and you're starting from scratch. So we're hoping to make it smoother. But my goals for today are to share the range of awards that are available through ASB, just touch on general, eligibility, submission materials, deadlines. This is a real information push to the group in terms of, I just want to share overall, and then I'm hoping in the breakout sessions we get into more specifics of the needs of this group and others and how we can improve the process. I'll go through what the actual review process is to shine some light on that, highlight awards for early career scientists, discuss some known barriers to applying and some of the things that I think we can do to lessen those barriers. I'll highlight common mistakes and tips for a strong application, and then discuss some changes coming to awards. So, being new in this role, I do have some leeway here to make some changes, and I've already been approached by many people who've had suggestions, and it's been great. And I'm hoping to to do a lot in these 3 years to especially make them more accessible and to diversify our awardees. I think ASB has a long way to go in terms of better representation within our award winners, and that really starts with the pool of awardees that we have. So so of course I'm encouraging all of you to apply. So this is a lot on this slide, and but I just want to give you the full spectrum of what we give. We give individual awards. So this is really highlighting a person's work in a particular area. And so late career, if you're not familiar, we have our most prestigious award, which is the Borelli Award. And that's really about general career accomplishment in biomechanics. Also, typically the Jim Hay Memorial Award is a late career award, and that's really focused on sports biomechanics. Again, I'm not going to dive into all of these, just so you know, but any questions can be asked individually afterwards. Then there's this mid-career range. A newer award is the Founders Award. That is about science accomplishment and mentorship. And I put here 5 to 20 years. It's 5 to 20 years past your terminal degree. So that's quite a long range, and a lot of people actually are eligible for this award. And so don't count yourself out if you're sort of a bit earlier in your mid-career range. Then we have specific early career awards, the pre-doctoral and postdoctoral. Right now, they are currently named the Young Scientist Awards, but as I'll tell you later, we're looking to change that name. And then we have, again, 2 newer awards, which I like to call open rank awards. There's the Goyle Award, which is really focused on entrepreneurship and translational biomechanics, named for VJ Goyle. And there are no specifications about what stage you need to be in your career. It really is focused on kind of making a tangible product and benefiting society. So typically, yes, you might think that that may lean towards a late career award, but I would challenge you to think about some of the design projects you've done or teams you've worked with, and how those maybe have translated into impactful products to the biomechanics society and society at large. Our most recent award is the Jean Landa Pytel Award here at the bottom, and that is really focused on mentorship and diversity in mentorship. And that one especially, it has its own awards committee, and that committee was the first year we joined that committee, and they really emphasized to me as the one managing the awards that we don't want people to think about this award as a late career award, because there are many people in the earlier stages of their career that are doing amazing outreach and work to really to emphasize biomechanics and to get people into biomechanics, get people excited about biomechanics. So that's one that I want to highlight up front here. Additionally, we have a series of grants that are given, or different types of monetary awards. There's a student grant and aid to provide research funding for graduate students. That award is managed actually by the education committee. So I don't manage that award, but I'm happy to speak about it and provide some information. And then we have travel awards to support the travel to the conference. Of course, in this past year, we weren't able to support travel, but we supported membership to ASB. There's a Junior Faculty Research Award, which is kind of a mini NIH grant where the winner can receive $5,000 to do a research project. So that's a specific faculty award. Then Research Travel Grant, which is really about bringing researchers together. So folks who want to work together, and if there's a faculty member who doesn't have travel money, this can support them in that endeavor. Then we have a list of abstract-based awards. So for these, you're submitting your abstract to ASB, it gets ranked high. We'll kind of talk about that later. And then it can be chosen for these different awards. And then more kind of every year, every meeting, there's always some extra awards or different things that get done by the organizing committee. And so this past meeting, we had 3-minute thesis awards, and there's always discussion about more awards to come, and anyone is able to submit some ideas for new awards, especially if you feel like there's an area that we're not reaching. So common award eligibility criteria, this is a no-brainer, but I just want to state these, and so you have these in mind, that you must apply on time. You must be a current ASB member, and you're going to see this on many slides. This is where people get tripped up on Some awards you can be in process of being an ASB member, but this is a huge part of the criteria. You need to be an ASB member. This is like the minimum set of eligibility. And also, if you're being nominated by someone, if it's an award that requires nomination, these people also must be ASB members. So we see troubles with this with our student travel awards, where their advisors need to be active members. Not members 2 years ago and you forgot to pay your dues, members now. And so just keep that in mind, that that is often a problem for folks. You cannot be serving on the awards committee for that award. I'll show you in the process where I don't even create the awards committee until after all the awards come in. So it's not something that you get counted out for very easily. And some of the awards require that you are not an ASB executive board member. And those would be the Borelli, the Jim Hay Memorial Award, the Goyle Award, and the Jean Landa Pytel Award. However, what's not in this list, for instance, is the Founders Award, and that's that one that has that 5 to 20 year range, because that's really a sweet spot for people to be on the executive committee. So there was some motivation to not put this extra burden on folks that, well, I think I'm good for this award, but I want to be on the committee, and we don't want to make it an either or choice. So submission materials, this is, every award is a little different, which is something I'm going to try to streamline, but just as an overview, generally for individual awards, you can be nominating yourself or be nominated by others. So don't count out the fact that for many of these awards, you can nominate yourself and write your own nomination letter. And then oftentimes our CV is required or a current research statement. And then many of the awards require the submission of your top 5 or top 3 publications that you'd like to add into the award application. In terms of the grants, many of them, require a research proposal, a letter from your advisor, and from the students for the student's perspective, and then a CV or bio sketch, depending on the award. So in general, these are things you might have on hand, except that letter from the advisor. So that becomes a very important piece in the process to get it in on time and make sure your advisor's keyed in and aware. And then the abstract-based awards, it's really just about you submitting to ASB. And then what's special about these is that if you've joined in on the ASB review process, if you've been an abstract reviewer, you are aware that you give a numerical rank to these abstracts. These ranks have meaning. These ranks go somewhere. These ranks determine who gets rejected from the meeting. And there are people every year, there are abstracts every year that aren't necessarily super low quality, but we do reject abstracts, and that's based on those scores and then the comments that go with it. Now on the flip side, we usually take the top scores and then they get put into this pool of top scores, which is where we determine the clinical biomechanics and the journal biomechanics winners. So deadlines, this is just to show that it's variable. Again, something we're kind of working on. Many of the individual awards are the same as the abstract deadline. So the Borelli is one, and the Goyle Award. The Jim Hay has a separate, and the Jean Landa Pytel has a separate award deadline. However, last year, this award deadline was shifted just because of me coming on new to the award management process. So just keep an eye out for these changes, and I'll discuss kind of where things are communicated. In terms of grants, grant and aid is January 15th. Diversity travel is usually April, and that can change. Junior Faculty Research Award, this is a hard deadline of February 28th, and then the Research Travel Grant March 1st. Some of the motivation behind these differing timeframes was to keep it separate from the abstract deadline, so you're not finishing your abstract and finishing your application. In the breakout, I'd love some feedback if you think that even matters, or if that's worthwhile, or if one deadline would be better. And then of course, with the abstract based, it's the abstract deadline. So briefly, the submission process. Right now, generally the awards are submitted as a PDF to the ASB chair email. And so I received those. It's my job then to check eligibility, which includes a membership check, of course. if there's time and I have bandwidth, I mean, you know, these are all volunteer positions, just like everyone who's leading this group, that something slipped through, and then there's this late rush of, oh my gosh, we were reviewing someone, but they actually didn't have active membership, and we don't want those things to kind of have to pull applications. So that's a really important piece of my job. Awards committee formation. So then I get this pool of awards. I have all the names of the people, their nominators, their advisors, and then I have to then pick folks from this active members from the society to then be on the review committee. And so key to that is really handling conflicts and really understanding what university people are at, who they might have been trained by before. And then there's the breadth of research areas. So in ASB, if you're not familiar, we have 5 main disciplines that when you are a member, you're asked to click on which disciplines really represent your work. And so on each review committee, I strive to have a breadth of all 5 of those disciplines. And for some awards, it's actually mandated in the ASB policies that I have to do that. And I try it for everybody, but some disciplines, as you might guess, are a little bit smaller, and some are really the majority of the society. So that's also something I'm working on, is how to really best manage that criteria within the group that we have, and then managing the appropriate career level for the reviews. So then we get the committee together. They are able to see the names of the applicants and to just be able to call out whether they have a conflict that I didn't know about, and then I have to replace them if they do, obviously. Then it goes through this first round of reviews where we're really narrowing down the field, where we're getting to the top 10, or maybe it's the top 5, depending on the number of winners. Then we get to this limited group. We do a second round of reviews, where then we're really focused on ranking who's left to pick the winner or the finalists. And then the finalists or winners are chosen. And for some of the awards, like the Journal of Biomechanics and the Clinical Biomechanics Awards, those are we pick finalists and then they present at the meeting, and then the finalist isn't picked until after the presentation. So then I just want to say, for early career folks, really the majority of the awards are pretty available. Now, of course, they all have tiny little details that you may or may not qualify, but the only ones I've crossed out here are Borelli and Jim Hay, and then the ASB Fellows Award, or fellowship status. It's not really an award. But this is just to emphasize, I'd advocate for you to consider the wide range of these awards. So known barriers: not having support of a nominator or an advisor to write a strong letter. Don't be afraid to nominate yourself. You can be your own best advocate. Think more broadly about your network. Think about this group here. Think of others who have awareness of your work. They don't, some of the travel awards require, the student travel awards require an advisor, but many of them, it's just a nominator. Not being a member of a research team who has a track record of winning. That is definitely an issue in probably many societies, but at ASB, you might think of these 5 labs who just typically win, and that is often a critique of our awards process. So when you're not in one of those labs, you don't have access to these winning applications, and you don't have this track record to follow. So don't be afraid to reach out to past winners. And my job in this is to make things more transparent, to provide really clear rubrics of what you're going to be judged on, provide some templates for people to follow for the letters. And then in terms of a perceived bias by the awards committee, that's absolutely, I've heard that feedback from folks in terms of, well, they're from X and X lab, of course they're going to win, they always win these awards. Well, this is really on me to expand the people on the awards review committee, diversity being key here. And then also my job to really, when I convene these review committees, to shine light on the potential biases and to make this clear to the reviewers up front, so they've got this in mind. And then where possible, trying to do blinded reviews. It's not always possible, but we're considering that. Not knowing or thinking that you qualify. Well, read through the award information, ask me. I can help you know where you might be in terms of the award group that we typically see. Some awards don't get many applicants. I'm not allowed to share how many and which ones, but it is worth a try. And Brian Umberger, our past president of ASB, I remember him telling me that the visibility you get by applying is huge. I mean, these reviewers are generally pretty qualified people in the society, and just having them read your work can really be a boon to your professional career and really get you known within other groups. So, so the review process itself can be very helpful to your career. And then my job to make this information easier to find and digest. You might not know about the deadlines far in advance. Well, become a member, and then you get the monthly newsletters. And that's where I do a lot of announcing of deadlines and things to keep track of for the future. And then it's my job to make this information more accessible through social media as well. So common mistakes, I'm not even going to put the mistake, you know the mistake, you're not a member. And then you think you're going to apply the next day. Well, Kate Saul, who is our membership chair, is not magic, although she seems like it most of the time. But it is up to her to then approve your membership, and that takes a little time. So, be cognizant again of the volunteer status of everybody and give folks time. One common mistake: nomination letters don't address all the award criteria. So I'm just gonna read the award description, separate topics by section and paragraph. For example, for the Goyle Award, it lists these three. Now I know they're broad and a little bit, they need to be more specific in terms of a rubric, but think about accomplishments in translational biomechanics, research, entrepreneurship, and societal benefit. Those are three specific things that need to be addressed in the nomination letter. My job, again, create this rubric for each award so people know what they're being judged on. Materials are missing, letters are missing, triple check. One and done applications. If you're still eligible the next year, consider applying again. Really, it's a very talented pool every year from my 1 year experience and what I've seen from the past. But you never know what next year is going to look like. You never know how many people are actually going to put one in. And then just lastly, I'll say that there are changes coming. The submission format, I'm looking to do a more structured submission as opposed to just emailing me a PDF. It's a lot of administrative burden on the back end of making sense of it all. Know that we're looking at changing the name for the Young Scientist Award. Know that I'm working on transparent rubrics for each award, expanding the reviewer pool. I will be putting out a call for folks in the society. If you're a member, you'll get that call in terms of self-identifying yourself if you're interested in being a reviewer. Potentially changing due dates, removing barriers to applying. This is where I'd love to know your ideas, and considering new awards. So that was a lot, and I look forward to discussing this more, and never be afraid to reach out to ask questions about any of this. So thank you.
So with the abstract paper awards, Missy, so fundamentally it's based on the abstracts that get submitted for the conference or the meeting, right? So you can't have a paper that's being published that wasn't put in as an abstract for the meeting. It has to be an abstract for the meeting, and then from those meeting abstracts, one is picked out.
Correct. Yep. Okay. It's all of the latest year's round of abstracts.
Okay.
And that's where I think I didn't fully understand in my own experience how those scores of the abstracts were going to be used. That was really impressive. When I was looking at this, I'm like, oh, I score these every year. And it's not like I'm flippant about my scores, but I just didn't realize how these scores are going to be used for especially these awards. So it's really important to be mindful and careful with your scoring.
Yeah, but it's also really important to go to meetings and submit an abstract, because if you don't, then you don't have any opportunity to be up for these awards, right?
Absolutely, absolutely. And the President's Award, I didn't mention this, it was in the list of the abstract ones. That's actually based on posters specifically. So that's the current year's ASB president reviews posters and then picks kind of their favorite. And so they get this special poster, this President's Awards. Now, I will say for that, sometimes they narrow their own pool by highest ranked posters. So it's really up to the discretion of the president, but just so you know, there's kind of many different ways to get there. And one of them is the scoring of these abstracts.
And Neil, are you all ready to go? We'll just switch it up a little bit.
Yeah, no problem. I can start sharing my screen.
All right, awesome, thanks.
Hope everyone can see this.
Looks good.
You can see it.
Yeah. Okay, thanks again for also inviting us to speak about the ISBS, so the International Society of Biomechanics and Sports Awards and Grants. So Neil and I actually share this kind of interesting. We both are VPs in our own areas, but I actually manage the grants and he actually manages the awards. So we hope I give you some information about this. I'm really glad Missy went ahead of us because there's a lot of similarities and the process is very similar, which I won't go into as many details as Missy has, but we also have the similar challenges. So it's good to learn from each other. So start with the grants. So the grants are what you can apply for as an individual to get some funding. And one of our most popular ones is the Student Research Grant. And this is to support undergraduates if they're in the final year or postgraduate students, it can also be PhDs, to undertake a biomechanics research project with researchers who are also ISBS members, so that you can travel somewhere and go do a project with someone or go learn about different techniques or go to another lab that has equipment that you don't have, for example, to help your project. That's what this would, you can apply for these. They're awards 1,000 euros. Sorry, I'm not sure what the conversion rate is at the moment with US dollars, but you can cover participant expenses, dissemination of findings, lab consumables, hardware and software costs, etc. And since 2012, 12 students have received student grant awards from ISBS. That's as far as in details I'll go on these grants, but obviously feel free to ask questions later about the details. Another grant we've recently started is the internship grants, and this is the idea is to support the work of full ISBS members by providing funding to have an intern. And particularly the goal is to have early career researchers to have, say in the summer, that you have an intern for 4 or 8 weeks who helps you with a project. And the idea is to help stimulate that research portfolio. And it also helps the student interest in biomechanics research. Very clear though that students cannot be PhD students. It's really meant for undergraduate or top master students to help you as a research assistant. And that can be up to 2,000 euros, and that will, the intern will actually get paid, which is a nice summer job. We can also cover the research consumables, and they get a 1-year membership. And we started this grant in 2017, and there have been 7 awardees since then. And another one that we've recently started is what we call the Early Career and Developing Researcher Mobility Grant. And this is also to support the full members to travel to another member's lab or an applied organization, such as an industry. And the idea is there to do some collaborative research. So it's a little bit higher step than the actual student research grant. And this is actually a collaborative research with another lab. Something we're proud to say we now have changed, which got approved, is if you are unable to travel because you have children or you're caring for elderly family member or other family members, we actually have, it's more of an immobility grant, you could say, that you can apply for this funding and actually have someone come to your lab, but you still get the credits of having a grant. We thought that was a really important one because we noticed that, we heard as well that for mothers, it's quite hard to apply for a grant and leave your family for 8 weeks. So you can go do some collaborative research. So these grants are also for 2,000 euros, and they can be travel costs and accommodation, as well as what's required for the actual study. For the conference specific, we have student travel grants. So these are to financially support students in attending the conference. And these are grants of €500 per student, and you have to have a paper or poster accepted as the lead author at the conference, and that's what the criteria is for these grants. I think those are the, so I just want to say we're, as a society, we're really excited about these grants, and that's actually the majority of our budget goes towards these grants to really support members to try and get these research out, and it's something where we really hope that members use, and that it helps them in the research. As Missy says as well, it's important that you are a member, and again, applying for them, there's still a few of those grants as well that do not get many applicants. So I again also encourage people just to apply and to try and see how you get there. Neil, I'll let you take over if that works, and I can.
Yep, perfect. Thanks, Ina. Yeah, and in particular, thanks, Missy. I think it was a really nice overview of particularly those barriers and potential solutions that you mentioned in your talk there. And I think that probably echoes a lot of my experiences in the role, which I've had for just over a year now for ISBS. And two things that really stood out for me as well, I think, in terms of just the key things I've noticed from doing the initial screening of applications has been around the need to make them easy for assessors to navigate against the criteria, as Missy touched on. I think it's such a simple but often overlooked part of those applications. And the other one around gaining visibility by applying. As Ina and Missy have both said, we get not as many applications for some awards as you think, and actually the visibility you do get by those senior researchers who are reviewing those awards, I think is a fantastic opportunity. I'll just start by talking about our ISBS Fellows Award. And these ones, they recognise service to ISBS. So these are for members of ISBS for 5+ years. And typically we have 1 or 2 of these each year. And we've had 3 members you can see on the right-hand side here in recent years. So Sarah, Laura Ann and Venny have all become ISBS Fellows. So this is about a kind of continued service to ISBS and to sports biomechanics. So those are either self-nominations or nominated by others, and a letter of support from an advisor who's an ISBS fellow or established member is required for those. And then the other one, if Ina, you can just move on to the life members as well. Again, for the more senior members who've made outstanding contributions to the society. So Liz Bradshaw recently received one of these, again, for members of long-standing, more than 10 years, who've made significant contributions. And this is quite a prestigious award for our ISBS society. Our most prestigious award is the Jeffrey Dyson Award, and delighted that next year we've got Senior Professor Julie Steele is going to be delivering this award at the conference, however the conference may be held. And this is something that is really the most prestigious award of ISBS. And I think one thing that I'd like to sort of mention here from my point of view, from having taken over the awards role and looking down the previous winners of this, in the first 6 years of the Dyson Award, 3 out of the 6 winners were women. And that was back in the late 80s and early 90s. But since then, it took a considerably longer time for then Patria Hume and now Julie Steele to be much more recent winners of the award. And I think it's something that, again, as a society, and particularly through the work Ina's done, we're very acutely aware of this. And one of the key things that we can all do to hopefully help this is that any ISBS member can nominate for this award. So I think it's a fantastic opportunity for those people who've had fantastic women role models and leaders in their careers to be able to nominate for this Dyson Award, which is that most prestigious one that ISBS has. Our other awards are then more for the sort of students and the early career researchers in the society. Our Hansgrohe's Emerging Researcher Award is for excellence in early career research. So again, just like the awards that Missy talked about and the grants Ina's talked about, being a member is the most important thing first and foremost. This Emerging Researcher Award is within 2 to 5 years of terminal or PhD graduation. And this one is supported by an application which includes evidence of research esteem, publications, essentially kind of main CV type information. along with an established researcher who's an ISBS member writing a letter of support for that application. Next, we have our new investigator award, and this is our kind of main at-conference award that's judged based on the papers submitted for the award. So we typically have a lot of applicants for this every year, which we shortlist down to typically 8 for oral presentations and 8 for poster categories, which are then judged at the conference by members of our awards committee. And these are based on the quality of that paper and then the presentation at the conference. And again, the criteria for this, obviously being an ISBS member and attending that year's conference, but it's for our students or members who've been less than 2 years since their graduation. I think one other thing I'd just like to mention here as well, and again, similar to something Missy mentioned, is we have an awards committee who work for the society. And again, when all the awards applications come in, we start to look for who can sit on which committee for which award. And that's certainly something that we're always seeking new members to volunteer for and to get involved with. So if any of you are ISBS members and would like to get involved in the awards committee, then please do get in touch with me and put yourself forward, because I think it's a good opportunity again to network within the society, to see the other sides of what goes on in awards committees and reviewing, and hopefully start to build your profile and your own ability to attract awards as well.
Thank you. That's great. All right. So we'll kind of leave the chat open for questions, but Katherine, if you're ready, we'll try again and switch over.
Let's try again. My computer froze and went crazy, so maybe that was the problem. All right, do we see my screen now?
Yes, I see your slide.
We've got an audience in the background. So thanks everybody for bearing with me, and for the group for inviting me. So I'm going to talk about the ISB student grants in one of our new award categories that we've just put in there. And before I start, I just wanted to make a comment, because this is a group of women biomechanists that I joined the ISB Council last year. You had to go up for election, and I almost didn't go up because I thought I was too junior and I wasn't qualified to sit on the ISB Council, because that was just for old people. I was wrong, and I was encouraged by my senior mentor to become more involved. So don't always assume that you are too junior or not qualified enough to go up for some of these things. So I just want to say a few things about ISB in general. So it is quite an old society. It started in the 70s, and its goal is to promote and stimulate biomechanics at the international level. And so it's affiliated with most of the national organizations that I feel like sometimes get a little bit more recognition within each of the universities, at least particularly in the US. So in addition to being affiliated with all of these national organizations, the ISB also has 7 technical sections, which all hold meetings often around when the ISB Congress are. And so these are more specialized groups that are either focused on techniques or concepts, and sort of create a smaller environment for you to get to know people, smaller meetings that are often a little bit less intimidating than the large international Congress, to start to get involved in the society. So just as a quick note on ISB. Now, we hold a Congress every 2 years, and our next Congress will be next summer, and we are crossing our fingers that there's a small chance we might be able to do it in person. It will be in Stockholm, Sweden, and they have set up quite a lovely, this is the view from the Congress Center out onto the water. So they've got quite an excellent program set up already, with great Congress facilities should we ever be allowed to leave our homes ever again. So just a quick plug for that. Now I want to talk about 5 different student grant opportunities. And then in the chat, we can go through some of the details. But I will say at the very start I've only been in this for 1 year, but I have all of the historical data. We do not get that many applications, particularly for the first two, the Matching Dissertation Grant Program and the International Travel Grant Program. So these are excellent opportunities. Put in an application. We're always wanting to fund more. We usually fund about 50% of all the applications we get for those two. So a great opportunity if these are things that you might be interested in. In addition, some of our technical groups also have grants. I know the Footwear Biomechanics Society or group has additional travel grants to support or offset the costs to go to their meetings. So it seems expensive and outlandish to travel to some of these meetings, but there's lots of opportunities to get some financial help to go. Now, if you want to know more about what some of the sort of places people have gone or the different activities that have been funded by the ISB, all of our awardees have to write a summary in the ISB Now newsletter. This is available on the ISB website. So I encourage you, if you're interested in any of these opportunities, but are sort of unsure about what types of activities go on, to go and see the firsthand account from our awardees. And then you also know who the awardees are, and I'm sure most of them would be more than happy to discuss their experience if you send them a quick email. Now, I know this is a group of biomechanists across many, many career stages. Our grants are only intended for students, so we do not have any grant opportunities for postdocs at this time. But I will say, having just recently transitioned through the promotion and tenure process in the US, for those of you who are at more senior career levels, it looks great if your mentees get some of these awards. So think about yourself, but also think about advancing your mentees in terms of building your own stature in the field. So our first one is the Matching Dissertation Grant. And I think this is one of the ones that's more underutilized, particularly from students outside of the US. I would say 90% of the applications I reviewed this year came from US institutions. So this is a grant that's designed to support your PhD dissertation research. And one of the caveats is you do need to have a commitment from your university or from another source to match the ISB, the funds from ISB, which would give you a total of $5,000 US. But if you can find that small amount of money from your university, and many universities will happily match funds, or from your advisor, the only place that matching fund cannot come from is from your pocketbook. Now, we encourage the people who win these awards to come and present at the next ISB Congress, and of course to publish their work in one of our ISB affiliated journals in the end. And as I said, we fund sort of 3 or 4 each year at this point, and that's about 50% of our application. But as the society grows and our membership grows, I expect that we will fund more than that each year. So if you want to apply, as Missy stressed, you need to become a member. This is a common thing for all of the awards from these societies. So you need to become a member, and your supervisor also needs to become a member of the ISB. It is not something that's very difficult to do. It's not something that's particularly expensive. So it's highly encouraged that you do this. You also then, for the Matching Dissertation Grant, need to get a letter of support from wherever your matching funds are coming from your university, from your supervisor, your department, any of these sorts of things. Finally, before you submit to any grant, you need to read those grant criteria. And we also have a lovely ISB Student Grant Tips Word document up there, where we've highlighted some of the common mistakes or places trying to clarify some of our guidelines. So all of these material I'm going to talk about today is available on the ISB website, which is isbweb.org. There's a student section that you can go to there to see all of this material as well. So our next deadline is December 16th for this one. So you have a perfect amount of time to prepare your applications for me. Now, when we review these things, we're trying to become more and more clear on what our review criteria are. So you are getting some firsthand knowledge about what I've got in our newest review criteria here. So in the Matching Dissertation Grants, we're going to review the significance and innovation, which is a very common sort of broad category for reviewing grants. What we want to see is some clear research aims. And then we want to see that your study design and methods are consistent with those aims. So it doesn't have to be the fanciest. It doesn't have to be the most, I don't know, latest and greatest technique that's out there. It needs to be clear. The other thing we're really looking for is the feasibility. This is a one-year grant, and the reviewers have all done one-year grants. So we're very cognizant about how much you can actually do in a year. And so if this is your dissertation grant, one of the things you need to think about is that we're not funding your entire dissertation. We're going to fund a portion of it that you can complete in a one-year period of time. So in that case, you may need to propose only one aim from your dissertation for the grant, but then describe to us how this fits into this one aim fits into the larger project. We then need to be clear that you have the infrastructure available to do this. If you're going to propose a motion capture study and you don't have a motion capture system at your university, we are not going to fund markers for your motion capture. Finally, the last one, and I think this is the one that sort of prevents a lot of people from applying for these sorts of things, is the investigator category. And so in this, we are looking at productivity to date, and that's what scares a lot of people off. But I will say that we're considering productivity to date, so your papers and abstracts and projects, but we're also considering the stage of your career. So if you're a first-year PhD student and you're applying for this because you've already got a project ready to go, then we don't expect you to have 2 or 3 papers out there. Maybe you've got an abstract from your regional congress that you've been to. Maybe you have an abstract from an undergraduate conference that you attended. All of those sorts of things to show that you have participated in research are considered as part of these applications. So a paper in Nature is not the criteria you need to meet in order to be strongly evaluated in the investigator category. The other thing that's very important, of course, is that mentor's letter of support. I know not all mentors write the bestest letters of all, but this really is one of the most important things as part of this application. We have a participant here. Oops. So this is what the reviewer's template looks like. So we have those criteria there, and then in this, the scores for significance, feasibility, investigator are all based on this 1 to 9 scale. And so we're going to ask the reviewers to rate you as exceptional, outstanding, excellent, very good, good, satisfactory, fair, marginal, poor. We have 2 reviewers review each of the applications, and then we take the average of the scores in these areas, rank everybody, and then come up with the top 4 or 5 applications in order to fund those. So for those of you who have looked into, or in the US, who've looked into the NIH scoring criteria, you might recognize these categories because that's where I took them from. All right, the other one that's often asked the question is, what can you put on your budget, right? You ask, we're funding $2,500, what can you ask for? So what on the budget we're looking for is material and supplies, human participants, core facility fees or fees to use equipment, something like imaging costs. The only thing that the ISB grant will not cover is indirect costs. So we will not give money to your university or department, and we will not buy major equipment. So materials and supplies, reagents, markers, tape, that sort of stuff as we're thinking there, but we're not going to buy a new EMG system. Now, the key is if you have some funny thing that's necessary for your project because you're building something neat, and it may be not totally clear how that fits into a research project, you just need to explain it. And I think that's the biggest weakness we see in applications, is that things are not clearly justified in terms of what types of items are going on your budget. And I think that goes for all grants. You need to be very clear what you're doing so that the reviewers can evaluate you properly. So that's our one research grant, and the next 4 are travel grants. And there's 2 different types of travel grants that we offer. Travel grants to go and visit another lab, and that's our international travel grant program, and then our international affiliate development grant program, and then 2 grants in order to travel to meetings. the Congress travel grant, and the technical group travel meeting. And as I said before, some of our technical groups do have additional travel grants as well. So our international travel grant is to support you to travel to another lab to learn something. We again encourage you to present at the next ISB Congress and to publish your work from the new research project that you did into one of our ISB affiliated journals. Some of the examples of what students have done in the past is we just funded one where a student is going to go and visit a collaborator's lab. The student and their advisor have developed a new technique, and so they're going to take this technique to implement in a new animal model, I believe, in a collaborator's lab. So they're going to share information somewhere else. Other people have gone to visit a lab to collect data. Maybe you have a particular piece of equipment at your university, so you can use this to go and collect data somewhere else. Or you're going to go to visit someplace to learn a new measurement or analysis technique. Now, all of these things can be sort of general, but what we want to see is that your project is going to work towards a paper, an abstract, or a future grant. There's some clear direction to where this visit is going, that you are not just going to go and visit the University of Calgary to hike mountains, as an example. All right, again, to apply, you need to be an ISB member. Your supervisor also needs to be a current financial member. And in this case, you need to get a letter from the host who will support you. That host does not have to be an ISB member, but it's great if they are. Now, I will say that we are still funding these. So there are 2 deadlines each year, one in June and one in December of each year. Apologies, getting more treats. And we're still awarding these so that you can still put it on your CV, and then we're just holding the funds until people are able to travel. So once travel plans can happen and travel restrictions are lifted for wherever you were going, we will then release the funds to you so you can do this. So it's still worth applying for the International Travel Grant, even though you're stuck at home in the middle of a pandemic. And if you never get to go, you can still say that you won this award later on, and it will look great on your CV for the future anyways. So these ones, we are also going to evaluate you on those same criteria. But what the sub-bullets are under significance and innovation is slightly different. So we want to see that you have some clear learning objectives for your research visit, that you've designed some sort of course or experiment and have a strategy for how you're going to achieve those goals that you've outlined, and that the goals and the methods that you're going to do this are consistent with what the goal of your visit are. You cannot just go to say that you are going to learn stuff from somebody cool who's a leader in the field. We need to know what you're going to do, how you're going to accomplish this, and how this is going to further your career in education. And I think that's one of the biggest mistakes that we see, or that one of the biggest weaknesses we see on some of these applications, is they're not clear on what you're going to learn exactly and how you're going to do that. So if you want to learn a new analysis technique, it's best to say what data you're going to do that on. Has it been collected already? Is it yours? Is it the groups that you're going to? How this is going to lead to your development of your PhD dissertation, the completion of your dissertation if you're learning a technique that's important for that, or just your career in general. The other one that's often really hard to think about when you're designing this wonderful project in this cool place is the feasibility to complete it within the timeline. Typically, the international travel grants are a visit of sort of 6 to 8 weeks. So what can you do in that period of time? You clearly can't undertake a giant human subjects research project and finish that in 6 to 8 weeks. So you need to think about being able to accomplish your goals within the time frame that you will be at that new institution. The other thing for feasibility that's very important is that the host has the resources in order to support your visit. And this includes the physical resources, but also includes the time and people who will interact with you, because those are very important. If you're going to go to this new place because they have this cool new machine and then nobody can help you learn how to use it, you're not going to get as high scores on this grant that you've just put in. Similar to the international travel grant, but this one is focused on student biomechanists from low income and restricted currency countries, is a almost identical travel grant, except that we are trying to devote more funds in order to support students with fewer opportunities. So we've got the same review criteria as the international travel grant, except that you are going to visit an established biomechanics lab that is hopefully a member of the ISB in order to advance your biomechanics career and obtain some of those opportunities so you can compete for the larger grants later on. And you might not have those opportunities to build those skills in your own country. Now, I think one of the key things to ask that I often get asked is, how do you find some place to visit? And how do you convince somebody to host you? You know, you're just a PhD student, you might not have the confidence. So how are you going to figure out somewhere to go so you can learn these new cool things? Maybe you're not an extrovert. So the first thing that I always suggest to everybody is to ask your supervisor. Express that this is something you're interested in, maybe give them a few ideas of countries you'd like to visit. This has to be international. And they probably have friends. So they're the first stop. The other one place you can start to get some ideas is to chat with postdocs or faculty mentors at conferences. So if you go to a local conference, it doesn't have to be somebody who's international who can give you some ideas. So a local mentor might suggest that they know somebody who's in Switzerland who would love to host a PhD student or a new end-stage master's student for 6 weeks to learn something new. You can also get involved in the ISB mentoring program. It's a distance mentoring program, so you can see our student website, and it has a list of mentors who are interested in getting involved in international mentorship. You can also look through the membership directory on the ISB website. You do need to be a member to log into that, just to see who else is a member, and maybe you'll learn about some new labs around the world. So once you've found somebody who you go and visit, how are you going to get them to invite you? So how do you contact somebody? So one of the easiest ways is to, again, ask your supervisor or somebody similar, a postdoc, friend of a friend, who knows this person, to send an introductory email to introduce you to them. And from there, you can start your discussion to see if this visit might be possible. Now, of course, maybe you want to visit someplace that your supervisor isn't familiar with. So then you're going to email that person yourself. And you're going to put the ISB International Travel Grant in the subject line so that it's very clear to the person you've emailed what this is about, because then you're less likely to get deleted right away. And I'm going to say, make two comments as a person who gets a large number of emails and is terrible at managing them. Don't feel insulted when somebody doesn't reply right away. It doesn't mean that they're not interested in hosting you. It might mean that they got 300 emails that morning and read yours and thought it was really exciting, and then somebody called them for a meeting, or who knows. So send a follow-up email 2 weeks later. And just see, often that's enough to prompt somebody to respond right away. And if they don't, again, don't feel insulted. People get thousands of emails, and not everybody has the bandwidth to respond to everyone. They're not going to be angry that they had an email from you in your inbox. They'll probably recognize your name later on somewhere and apologize to you a year later. They didn't respond to your email. Should you send it? So there's very little risk to sending somebody an email to start this type of conversation. All right, our last grants are the travel grants. And our goal here is to help reduce the travel expenses to attend a meeting. Our dollar values are on a sliding scale based on the distance you are from the Congress. So this is international, and we acknowledge that the cost to travel internationally is very variable depending on where we host it. So typically the meetings are hosted in Europe one year, and then Asia or Australia, and then in North America. So it sort of cycles through on a 6-year cycle, the places where it is. So our travel grants range from $600 to $1,200 US for the ISB congresses. And then there's $500 for the technical groups. Now the key here is you must be the first author on the abstract, and you must be intending to present it at the Congress. The one thing that trips people up is that the deadline is the December 6th deadline, and the Congress deadline often isn't until sometime in January. So you have to submit your abstract. So what are you going to do? It's clearly not going to be your final draft, and that's okay. What we want to see is a solid first draft of your abstract, clearly outlining what your analysis was. Maybe you're going to add more participants to your analysis, more samples to your analysis. But we want to get an idea about what type of work are you presenting. Now, some general comments about the CV. Again, as I said earlier, the stage of career is considered. You're going to need to put in a CV for all of these awards. And we will also consider the opportunities that you may have been offered along the way. So schools, locations, those are also things that the reviewers might consider in evaluating your CV. If you are at top biomechanics university in the country with every opportunity available to you to do all of the types of research with all of the types of equipment, and you have published a single abstract in your 5 years as a PhD student, you will not be evaluated very strongly. However, if you are from a very small school who is just starting up in biomechanics, limited opportunities, and you have taken every opportunity, and it's clear that you have, and you now have 2 abstracts as a 4th-year PhD student, that will be evaluated in a different context. So don't be worried or self-conscious about your CV if you're not from a place that is a big powerhouse in biomechanics, and maybe you don't have all of the opportunities. The reviewers are very aware of these types of things, and will consider those softer parts of the application when they're making their reviews. Now, the one caveat to that is when we look at the Congress travel grants, the more senior candidates are often considered more strongly for that award. If it's clear from your abstract that you're going to present the primary paper from your dissertation that you have clearly worked on, and it's sort of your contribution to the field, that's the type of stuff we're really excited to fund, rather than the first project that maybe is a little bit less prominent in terms of your career progression along the way. Now, the last thing I just noticed as I was reviewing for this, that we do ask for test scores, standardized test scores like GREs. I will say that I will be pushing for those to be removed, given all of the new knowledge I have from our university inclusion office about sort of bias on some of the standardized test scores. So again, don't let standardized test scores throw you off from submitting for these things. All right, we have one new award, and I'm getting another bag of treats here.
Katherine, just to let you know, we're a bit over, so we might ask you to kind of wrap up quickly, and we'll open the breakout rooms shortly afterwards.
All right, so this is my last slide. We have a new ISB award, which is the Jacqueline Perry Emerging Female Scientist Award. And so this is an Emerging Scientist Award that will be specifically given to females to elevate females within the International Society of Biomechanics realm. So a little bit about Jacqueline Perry there, but this is for people who are post-PhD, but not more than 5 years. And similar to many other sort of emerging scientist awards, we ask you to submit some articles. So this is just a brand new award I wanted to highlight for us. And with that, I am done. So apologies for going over. Thank you.
Thank you so much. All right, so we'll kind of launch into our breakout rooms. I think we'll stop recording this session now. But I know there's some questions